'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, except the two assholes coming in the rear in standard podcast formation. Folks, welcome to episode 5 of Going Commando, the only podcast in the known universe about 80s and 90s action movies. I'm Bryne. That's James. Hi, James.
Hi, Bryne.
I'm trying different things with the intro, and I don't ever want to tell you about them because I want you to be surprised. So
I always am. If you notice, as you were I was trying to not laugh really hard. I was like,
you can
that's
laugh.
Good.
I would appreciate it if you laughed at the things that I did. That would be a nice thing for you to do.
Okay, you got it, buddy. I'll laugh.
Thank you very much. I crave constant reassurance, you might say. So that would be one way to give it to me on a podcast where we're supposed to be hanging out and making each other laugh.
I got you, buddy. Gotcha. All right, so what are we reviewing this week? What are we talking about?
Well, it is part 2 of our Christmas special.
Mm-hmm.
And we are discussing what many consider to be a quintessential Christmas movie, and we'll get to that. I think I would just consider it a quintessential action movie. We're talking, of course, about Die Hard, which came out in 1988, starring Bruce Willis as John McClane. Iconic role, iconic movie. So
really made the man's career, for sure.
It did. So we'll get into that here in a second, but I want to very quickly tell you that we are on social media, if that's your sort of thing. Going Commando Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, goingcommandopod@gmail.com. So, Die Hard. Tell me about your history with Die Hard, James.
Probably, again, much the same as yours. I think the first time I remember watching it all the way through, at least an unedited version, was probably, I don't know, I was like 11 or 12. I remember we watched it a couple times over at my house, and then I remember the next morning we would watch like Batman Beyond and eat cereal.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the first time I ever remember watching the movie completely through, unedited, from start to finish. I do remember this really clearly, and this is going to sound weird to have this random memory. I remember having an argument with a friend of mine in second grade, and we were arguing about who was the more badass action star. And I was trying to argue that, obviously Arnold was, because I was a huge Arnold fan, and this buddy of mine had seen Die Hard, and he was like, but the guy was walking through glass. And I'm like, okay, that does sound pretty badass. But now that I'm thinking about it, like, we were in second grade. Who in the fuck lets their second grader watch Die Hard?
Well, I mean, it's I have very distinct memories of watching R-rated movies with my parents as a young one. We definitely went and saw one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies in the theater when I was like 7. It must have been Freddy's Dead. I guess that's about the time that came out.
Probably, yeah.
It was like 91, 92, right?
Yeah, give or take a year.
So, yeah, and then I remember my mom taking my sister and I to see True Lies in the theater, and that came out in 94, so I guess at that point I was probably 9. So, it's... And not only that, but think about in the before times when you went to a movie theater and saw whatever, action movie, something R-rated, whatever it was.
Right.
Every single time you go to see one of these R-rated movies, whether it's a packed theater or not, in my experience, there's always a child somewhere in the theater, whether it's a baby, toddler, who knows, but
true.
Almost every time.
True. And as we talked about in the first podcast, they have to learn foul language somewhere. It might as well be from John McClane on the big screen, right?
Exactly. I mean, can you really imagine being in second grade, seeing that movie, and then just like going out in the yard and just start yelling like "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!" And it's like this cool and fun and exciting thing to say, and like your parents like can't really get mad at you, I don't think, because it's their fault that you're saying it.
I think they can get mad at you, but I don't think they can get too mad.
They can get mad, but they're wrong. They'll be wrong for getting mad.
Well, yeah. I mean, nobody ever accused everybody's parents of doing the right thing when they get mad, right?
Man, I tell you what, it used to piss me off so bad when I was a kid when, like, you would get the whole, like, do as I say, not as I do thing. Especially when you're maybe not in second grade, but you're a little bit older and you kind of have a little bit more of an idea of how the world works. You don't know everything, obviously, but my mom would always like say like, I don't have to give you a reason why, is what she would always say when like I wanted to do something and couldn't do it or wasn't allowed to do it.
Right.
It's like,
right.
It's like, no, you do need to give me a reason why. Like, if she had given me a reason why, maybe I would have understood. Maybe not, because I was probably like an angsty teenager. But
I think I distinctly remember your mom telling us, "I don't have to give you a reason."
Yeah, it's like you're not you're my mom and I love you, but you're not the fucking Pope. You're not infallible. You know, not everything you say is gospel. So give me a reason why.
Right. Explain to me. I think a lot of times, like, if parents would explain the reasoning why to their kids, like, you can't do that. Well, why? Give them the reason. Maybe the kids would be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to give too much credit to kids. Who knows?
Maybe not. But at the very least, I feel that's what you owe your child is an explanation, because we don't know, because we're not our brains have not fully developed. So when you say something like. So when you say something like, I don't have to give you a reason why, I don't know how to process that as like a 12-year-old or 10-year-old or whatever I am.
No, I think you're right. I think an explanation would be beneficial in the explanation and trying to like, determine that.
My mom is probably going to listen to this and get so pissed off.
Has she been listening to the podcast?
I mean, she follows the pod on Instagram. I don't know how active she is on Instagram, but I haven't talked to her about it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if she is listening. I feel like she tends to kind of support all the little like stupid creative endeavors I've had throughout my life in one way or another, which I appreciate. Thank you, Mom. I love you, Mom. Even though we just, said
kind of drug you through the mud a little bit.
A little bit, but it's okay. It's water. It happened a long time ago. It's water under the bridge as far as I'm concerned.
Hi, Elise. I love you. I still live in your state, so don't come track me down and kill me, please.
Now she softened up in her old age a little bit, not in a bad way, and she's not old. I'm gonna walk that back. I'm gonna walk that back too, because I'm sure she's gonna hear that too and also get pissed off.
Possibly.
Hey, this is a sidebar to a sidebar. I meant to bring this up at the top, but right before we started recording, we were watching Chopped on the Food Network, which is a show that I enjoy, and eating dinner. And one of the commercials was a trailer for a movie called Wild Mountain Thyme. Have you seen this or heard about this trailer for this movie?
No.
So Wild Mountain Thyme.
I'll look it up real quick.
So Wild Mountain Thyme, I'm not even really sure what it's about. And it's thyme like the herb thyme, so THYME. It appears to be some kind of like really kind of like soapy romantic drama movie. But it has the most random cast I think I've ever seen in movie history. So the stars of Wild Mountain Thyme are Emily Blunt, Jamie Dornan, John Hamm, and Christopher Walken. Those are the 4 billed actors and actress in this movie. And I think it takes place in like Ireland, maybe?
Yeah, that's what it says here. It says a pair of star-crossed lovers in Ireland get caught up in their family's land dispute. That seems like a really strange premise for a movie. I mean, who knows? It's probably pretty good. Almost everything Emily Blunt. Well, I mean, if that's your kind of movie, it's probably pretty good. I mean, like I can't do the rom-coms. I can do some of the rom-coms, but like they have to be more funny than sappy.
Yeah.
And this looks like it might be sappy more than funny.
Oh, the sap is thick with this one. I can tell already. It's just interesting though, because a movie like that takes place in the old country, and you get a guy like Christopher Walken to be in it. Now, he does not speak in the trailer. There's like a very quick shot of him just looking like an old man. Christopher Walken speaking with an Irish accent. That alone might get me in the door, actually.
He probably won't do an Irish accent, but can you imagine if he did an Irish accent?
No, I bet he does.
Just like with his cadence and the way he's like, Mary took the sheep.
I think we should do a bonus episode and watch Wild Mountain Thyme together and talk about it.
All right, man, I'm in. I don't normally, sign up for that kind of thing, but I'm in. I'll do it. I think you're right. It could be worth the price of admission alone just to hear Christopher Walken talking in an Irish accent.
Welcome to Ireland. Once upon a time, there were two farms. The Muldoon farm, where Rosemary lived, and right down the road was my farm, where my son Anthony asked his lonely question of the stars.
Why did you make me so?
Rosemary Muldoon.
Yeah!
We sought it with love.
There's these green fields, and there's us. Whatever that is, it holds me here.
When he says those things...
It's not normal.
I don't care.
You take after John Kelly, and that man was mad as the full moon. Drowned himself.
He fell in.
He had a rock tied to his neck.
I can't see him in a movie now, John Hamm, without thinking of Don Draper. So it's like every time if I see him in something like we were watching that movie Baby Driver. You ever seen it or heard about it?
I've not seen it. I know about it though. Yeah.
Okay, so we're watching him in there, and I'm like, why is Don Draper robbing these people? I don't understand. Like, I understand obviously he's an actor and it's a character, but for some reason, like in my brain, really quickly, I can't equate the like, oh no, he's an actor.
Yeah, I mean, it's, actors still definitely get typecast, especially if you're, an actor like him who, was on a show that was so popular and in such an iconic lead role for so many years. It can be difficult to kind of shake that in the eyes of the audience. But maybe an Irish accent is the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
So anyway, Wild Mountain Thyme. Check it out.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about this off the air. I'm about 80% in to your scheme here, but we'll see.
I can get you to 100, man. I'll get you across the finish line before the night is done.
All right.
So getting back to Die Hard, this, I think, my personal history with Die Hard. It's interesting that you bring up that you have a memory of us watching it together because, and I'm going to feel bad saying this, but I cannot remember that. I'm sure it happened. But something's going on with my brain where my long-term memory is just not what it used to be. I actually don't remember ever watching this movie front to back, which is funny because I think I've seen Die Hard with a Vengeance 50 times front to back. That's a conservative estimate. It's a great movie, but what's interesting about it is that watching this movie for the first Die Hard for quote unquote the first time. Even though it's probably not true, I didn't realize how many callbacks there were to the first movie in Die Hard with a Vengeance. They're very similar movies. A lot of the set pieces, the framing devices used in the plots are like really similar, which surprised me. But maybe I shouldn't be surprised by that.
There's also, I don't know if you probably didn't catch this, there is another actor in that movie besides Bruce Willis, who was in the original Die Hard movie, but plays a totally different character in Die Hard with a Vengeance.
And who is that?
Hold on, I'll tell you his name. He plays a supporting actor in both. I think he has like one line in the original Die Hard, maybe two, and a couple more in the previous one. One moment, though. That's what I love about having IMDb right here on the phone. You just kind of scroll through and go,
sir.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, settle these barroom arguments in 5 seconds. Remember going to bars before we had cell phones? And we would just like talk shit about stuff that we didn't know anything about and had no way of proving it one way or another.
Actually, exactly. That's kind of like what we were talking about, though, with Frank Dukes on our podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yes, which, if you're listening, Mr. Dukes, sir, if I can call you sir,
we'd still love to have you.
We would love to have you as a guest. We'll treat you with the utmost respect and care. And, go in commandopod@gmail.com or hit us up on Insta. I tagged you, so I know you saw it.
Okay, so the actor's name is Anthony Peck. And I don't know a whole lot about him, but he was in a couple movies, Hunt for Red October, Die Hard and Die Hard of a Vengeance, Last Action Hero. Anyways, in Die Hard, he plays...
Sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, all 4 of those movies directed by John McTiernan.
I bet you he might be a friend of John McTiernan, probably.
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason for it. But he plays a cop who's just kind of seen sitting there talking to Sergeant Powell's character, Sergeant Powell. He's kind of giving him a little bit of information. He's just kind of hanging out in a lot of the scenes. And then in Die Hard of a Vengeance, he plays Detective Ricky Walsh. He's one of the guys riding with McClane in the big police truck at the beginning when they drop him off in Harlem. Yes. And he's the one that they find dead in the Federal Reserve building where the German German soldier shot him. Yeah. But I don't know why. Faces sometimes, just click. And I saw the guy and I'm like, that guy looks familiar. So I was sitting there watching the movie last night and finishing it up. I looked it up and I was like, huh, interesting. We should look into that, though, just out of curiosity, to see if he knows John, like how him and McTiernan know each other.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be a coincidence.
No, it can't be.
It's interesting that you bring Mr. Peck up because watching this movie, there's like a higher quotient of like 80s movie guys in this movie than any other movie I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, you've got William Atherton playing the news guy, who I loved in Ghostbusters as the EPA representative. Yeah. It's like such a smarmy asshole, and he plays a smarmy asshole in Die Hard 2 as well. So
he does.
I was delighted to see him pop up. I always like it when he pops up in things. And then I got the guy's name right in front of me, but the deputy chief of the LAPD, who also plays the main bad guy in The Breakfast Club, Paul Gleason. Yeah, yes. Yeah, him popping up in this movie, also super delightful. Such an asshole.
Yeah, and I mean, you can go a little further than that still. Your FBI guys, Robert Davey and Graham Bush, they were also in a lot of 80s, early 90s movies. Robert Davey, he's been in so much stuff. Normally he plays a mobster or a bad guy, because he's kind of got this gruff face. Looks like he probably had really bad acne when he was a kid. And he just kind of comes across as a real kind of a dickhead in most of his roles. But he's in a ton of 80s stuff. And then, who else is in there is Al Leong. He played the guy who was torturing Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon.
Yes, exactly.
He was like your kid. I love it. I think pretty certain just by looking at his IMDb real quick. Okay, that's why. He's a stuntman. So that's why he's in a lot of stuff. They just kind of, because a lot of stuntmen, they throw in as extras. So that explains. So I had to have seen that guy in like 100 movies in the background doing something.
Yeah, I like it when he takes the Nestle Crunch bar from the little snack counter.
He must have been eating a bunch of candy bars. Though. If you pay attention, he eats a Crunch bar, and then like later, but before they're about to shoot the SWAT team guys, he's got like a Mars bar open. So like, dude loves candy, I guess.
I wonder how many takes they had to do, and how many candy bars they had to eat, or how many candy bars he had to eat.
Good question.
Which reminds me of something just really quickly. That's also off topic, but this just came off. This just came up on my feed yesterday. So John Cena is in the midst of, or maybe it's already finished, but he was filming the new Suicide Squad movie, and a story came out about him. There's a scene in the movie where he's eating an empanada, and apparently his idea of method acting was to have his character eat the entire empanada in each take to like make him look tough or something. I don't know. But they ended up doing 32 takes of this scene. So John Cena had to eat 32 empanadas for whatever the scene was, which is like, I mean, I admire the commitment, that's pretty impressive. I don't think I could eat 32 empanadas in any circumstance.
That's pretty rough, man. I mean, I like empanadas, but I don't know if I can sit down and eat 32 of them in a sitting. Although they may have shot that scene over like 2 days, for 8 hours, 16 empanadas in 8 hours or 8 to 12 hours of filming. That's not too bad.
I don't know. Based on the quotes from him in this story, it seems like it was all on the same day. So I'll just read it very quickly. His quotes. So he says, quote, "I had to eat an empanada, and I took it upon myself to try to eat the entire empanada in a seamless take, thinking that it'll look great. But it was also a complicated shot for James Gunn, I assume, is the director.
Yeah.
I don't know. 31 empanadas later, we got it right," he recalled. John clarified that he didn't actually throw up, but said that he got dangerously close. He said, quote, "I think 32 would have been the heave-ho, but I was able to like penguin waddle out of there and just relax and unbutton. But people are going to see the movie and nobody's going to care, so please remember the empanadas," end quote. There you go.
I don't know. John Cena seems like an interesting guy. I think I'd like to meet him. For one, he's a car guy, so I'm sure him and I could talk about car stuff. But he sounds like he's genuinely a pretty nice guy.
Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah. Comes across well.
I'd like to sit down and talk to him about eating 31 empanadas.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he has a future in competitive eating if this whole acting and wrestling thing doesn't work out, you know?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, at this point, he doesn't have to do anything anymore. I think his net worth is like $40 million or
Yeah,
something
that's
like
true.
that.
I'm sure he's pretty much set for life at this point. But
Oh, yeah, he can just roll off into the sunset at this point.
he still ate those damn empanadas though. People can't see this because this is a podcast and it's audio, it's not visual. But I'm gonna pretend I'm John Cena making my ring entrance, and I'm gonna do the salute. But it's a salute to John Cena for his commitment to his character in the new Suicide Squad movie, which I probably will not watch. So hats off, John Cena.
Yeah, I'll probably watch it, but we'll see. Warner Brothers has been hit and miss with all their DC universe movies, so we'll see.
I loved the Birds of Prey movie. I thought that was great, but I haven't really spent any time with any of the other stuff.
Yeah, see, I haven't watched Birds of Prey, so I don't know. I know that, like, I've heard a lot of people say that there's some characters that they probably could have thrown away, like big name characters that really just didn't make any sense because they're only in the movie for like a minute. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to watch it, but I didn't watch it in theaters or anything.
Oh, you should watch it. It's on HBO, I think, if you have like HBO streaming, whether it's like HBO or HBO Max. Okay.
Yeah, no,
it's worth a watch.
I'll watch it.
Super fun movie. Doesn't take itself too seriously. Yeah, really enjoyed it. You know what else I really enjoyed? It's Die Hard. Let's get back on topic. So one thing that really strikes me about Die Hard is, so it came out in 1988, kind of in maybe not the apex of eras as far as 80s action movies go. You could make the argument that they were kind of on their way down at this point, just in terms of popularity, marketability, that type of thing. And for the genre to kind of be viable still, there had to be like a course correction, right? Because you had all of these movies full of like Schwarzenegger, Stallone, like these muscled out macho guys, like overly macho, steroids, big guns, whatever you want to say about it. And then comes along Bruce Willis, who is not in any way, shape, or form either of those guys. He's an everyman, and he took this role and made it into something that's so iconic and ended up being so influential. And I mean, to me, it really seemed like it put the genre on a new, and I would argue better course going forward.
Oh, I would agree with that. I think his take on the movie, and casting him versus some of the people who were originally in the running to be in that movie, definitely course corrected action movies and changed things for the better. It's funny. I don't know how much looking into like the backstory of Die Hard that you watched. It's actually a sequel, technically. Are you aware of that?
I did see that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a sequel to and I don't remember the name of the movie, but a Frank Sinatra movie. And they were both written by one guy. But the deal was, I guess, that the movie, it changed hands a couple times. Frank Sinatra still had rights to the character somehow through a contract.
I did see that. They had to legally, they were legally obligated to offer him the role of John McClane in this movie Die Hard, but he was like 70 and said no.
Right, which I mean, let's hear it for being a man who knows when he's out of his element at this point.
Start spreading the news.
Exactly. I'm trying to remember when the other one came out, the movie, because I'm trying, because there's a little funny tidbit of information that's interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I know that Stallone was considered for the role of John McClane, Schwarzenegger was considered, and
Mel Gibson apparently.
Mel Gibson was considered, and this was a year after Lethal Weapon, so he was a hot commodity at that point, you might say. But again, I mean, we say this knowing full well that hindsight is 20/20, but it's really difficult to imagine anyone else in the role of John McClane. No one would have played it as well as he did, and made the character so relatable, believable, human. Because all the credit in the world to those other guys. Obviously we love a lot of their movies, or we wouldn't be here right now. But that's never really something you really run into when you're watching their movies. You're just waiting for the action to start, really. But with Die Hard and John McClane, you get, there's a sense of humanity there that I don't think is in some of those other action movies.
No, I agree. Hold on one second. because I got a piece of trivia for you here that you might find interesting.
Okay. All right. I said,
I'm looking it up.
A quiz, or are you just going to tell me what it is?
I'm just going to tell you what it is. So
Okay.
the author who wrote the original book that Sinatra was, where they did the Sinatra movie, is Lawrence Sanders. Okay, he wrote the other novel that Bruce Willis was in. Funny piece of little trivia though: Bruce Willis is actually in the movie with Frank Sinatra. The name of the movie is The First Deadly Sin, and Bruce Willis has a cameo coming through the door of a diner. He's in a shot with Frank Sinatra. So we're talking 8 years prior, because it came out in 1980. So 8 years prior to Die Hard. And then Bruce Willis ends up landing the role that Sinatra decided to vacate. I find it as a kind of a funny, interesting piece of trivia.
That is interesting. The world is a small place, and this is pre-John McClane Bruce Willis and also pre-Bruno Bruce Willis, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because, well, in 1980, I mean, he hadn't really done a whole lot of anything at that point in time.
Yeah.
I think it's actually his first movie credit, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. It's well, no, he was in this movie called Blind Date that came out before this that I remember a little bit just because it was on Comedy Central all the time. I think that was maybe 87. But this was definitely the movie that made him a movie star, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
You know.
And it's funny. I read an article where the studio was having trouble getting an actor to take the role. They had the script written. They had like pretty much everything set up. They even had a lot of principal characters cast, like scouting for the location, all this stuff done. Didn't have anybody set to star. So they went to Willis's agent, and he threw out an astronomical number to star in the movie. And they paid it to him. Basically, an unknown, unproven actor who never done really a starring role except for one other movie gets the biggest contract at the time of any actor in Hollywood to star in basically his first lead movie. It's a really weird, interesting story.
Grapefruits. The grapefruits on those guys. But,
right,
you know, to their credit, ask for as much as you want. You know, what's the worst that could happen? They just say no. And then either they cast someone else or the movie just doesn't get made, you know?
In an interview, what Bruce Willis's agent at the time said, he goes, it was really kind of a risky move for my client because, throwing yourself out there so far could totally ruin the career. If, you do the movie and it bombs, say Moonlighting gets canceled after that because people just think he's a joke. He can't land any other roles except for bit parts and supporting actor positions. It was kind of a big risk for him as well as the studio in a lot of ways.
Right, because to your point, I mean, he was known as like a comedic TV actor up to this point in his career.
Right.
And there are certainly comedic elements to the John McClane character, without a doubt. I mean, lots of comic relief. That's another thing about Bruce Willis and John McClane that I think makes this movie so great is when Schwarzenegger or Stallone read their comedic lines, it's funny, but it's funny in a different way. When you see and hear John McClane reacting to something that's happening to him and the way he reacts, it's very natural and very easy to identify with and feel, I think, versus, these big muscly tough guys who, are, they're in some sort of distress. There's some sort of conflict that needs to be resolved in whatever movie they're in, but
right.
They never really seem afraid.
No. I mean, can you imagine some of the lines, at least the way they're delivered in that movie? Can you imagine, Schwarzenegger delivering them?
Are we going to have to do our first ever Arnold impression 5 episodes in? I can't believe it took this long.
Maybe. One of my favorite lines is when he's talking to the woman on the 911 channel. She goes, "This line's secure for emergencies only." And Bruce Willis says something to the effect "No shit, lady, you think I'm ordering a fucking pizza?" Can you imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger saying that line? It wouldn't sound right at all. "No shit, lady, do you think I'm ordering a fucking pizza?" It would sound so weird and unnatural. I can't even imagine it.
No, I I can't either. I think he probably would have said "Oh, I can't say that. We have to cut that out." If it was him,
he might have. And that's another thing about this movie that it kind of shows the star as not being necessarily the most wholesome character.
Mm-hmm.
most of the, like, Stallone, Arnold, most of the big action guys, they played fairly wholesome roles for the most part. Stallone, even playing like somebody like Rocky or Rambo, tried to play them kind of clean. But this role, I mean, Willis played it for what it was. He's a cocky New York cop who's seen a lot and is kind of an asshole in a lot of ways.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah. He's kind of an asshole. His marriage is on the rocks for sure. He's of course flying to Los Angeles to visit his family who have moved to Los Angeles because his wife is some kind of hotel executive and got some crazy job offer that she couldn't refuse, and he decided to stay behind and not follow her, which is a big source of conflict between the two of them starting out. Again, that's like not something you would see Arnold or Sly Stallone really play well, at least at that point in their careers. Not in 1988, maybe later on, but
yeah, I can't think of. Stallone might have been able to pull that off to some extent. Arnold probably wouldn't have been able to do it. Like, I remember there's an Arnold movie from the 80s. I can't remember what the name of it is, but he's like this former FBI agent who is kind of disgraced for something, and he's like a sheriff in a small town, and he ends up faking his death to go under deep cover to get a mobster. It's so weird. You know the movie I'm talking about?
I do, and its name is on the tip of my tongue, so please keep talking and I will find it.
Anyways, so he's like, this undercover cop, and his wife back home is just this real kind of like awful person. Like, she drinks all the time and she's miserable and she just hates her life. She wants to be back in the city. And Arnold plays the role so clean, like he's got this woman coming on to him and he's, like, oh, I got a wife, I can't do this and everything.
Yeah.
And it's just not the way the character just seems odd and feels weird.
Raw Deal is the name of the movie.
That's the movie. I watched that like a year ago or so, like 2 years ago, I think. Why? I do not know. Because it's not really a great movie, to be honest.
I mean, it came out in '86. That's like, prime Arnold time as far as I'm concerned. But
it's true, but I think it's really kind of before. It's kind of before he hit his stride. I really don't think he hit his like real stride until Predator. Mm-hmm. Predator's kind of like where they figured out exactly how you play, how you do Arnold. Before that, I feel like they were still kind of trying to like get their foot in the door, and I don't think he even really hit his stride as an action star until later in the '90s.
Yeah,
Terminator 2 or something of that nature.
Yeah, Terminator 2 is. I mean, that's one of the best movies ever of any genre.
Oh, I think so. It's a great movie. But
might be the best sequel ever, actually. I can't think of one that's better.
It'd be hard. It'd be really, really hard to do a sequel. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's just, Willis plays the role really well. I can't see anybody else doing that role. Like when we were talking about Lethal Weapon on the last podcast, how Willis was actually up for the role of Riggs, now to know that, like, well, Mel Gibson was also talked about, I guess, briefly for the role of John McClane. I can't see either one of those guys swapping shoes for their roles. I just can't see the movie working.
No, because, again, and we talked about this last week, but to play a character like Marty Riggs as kind of like this, this cop who's on the edge, who's like good at his job, but is slipping mentally because of all the hardship that he's experienced in his life, and like being able to like kind of tap into that crazy aspect of that. It's hard to imagine an actor like Bruce Willis being able to do that. I think he could, and vice versa for that matter.
I definitely think he could, and I think that I think Mel Gibson could do the how am I trying to think of this? How am I trying to word this? He could do the role like John McClane, where you get this kind of like snarky, wisecracking cop. He could do that really well. I think they could have done it, but I don't think the movies would have worked the same. They wouldn't have had that magic.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same thing. But what comes to mind for me, and again, it's not really the same because he doesn't play a cop; he plays a thief in this movie. Is the Mel Gibson movie Payback, which I think is a very underrated movie where he's kind of an asshole, like a smarmy asshole. Obviously, much later on in his career, but
Yeah, they come out in like 98 or 99. I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep, like 99, I think.
Something like that. That was a good movie.
Yeah.
It didn't get panned very well by critics, and it didn't do very well, but I thought it was a great movie, actually. But you're right, he doesn't play that the way somebody like Bruce Willis would have played that role, where it would have come across a little bit more funny. It's almost a little almost slightly despair in some sense in the movie. not despair, like,
Oh, for
woe is
sure.
me, but just like, whatever, do what you want. I don't care. You know what I'm, you know what I'm.
Resignation.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. So yeah, I mean, we talked about this being Bruce Willis's first like real starring role. This was also, and I didn't know this until I was doing a little bit of research this afternoon. This is actually Alan Rickman's first movie. Period.
Ever. Yeah, first movie ever.
He was, obviously a well-known stage actor leading up to this, but had never done a movie before, which is, I mean, he's great. He's a great actor, and he's gotten so much movie work 30 years since that it's kind of hard to imagine that he hasn't been around longer in movies, I guess. And I mean, him playing Hans Gruber, again, completely perfect. Like, I don't know how they figured that out, given that it was that he'd never done a movie before, but it's played to perfection. He's capable. He's like sleek and smart, a little scary, but like not too scary, I don't think. And there's like a good balance that I think he strikes with that role that, again, hindsight being 2020, but it's hard to imagine anybody else doing that role as well as he did.
Yeah, I can't really think of anybody else. It's funny you say that. The only person I could think of that I think would be equally as good and scary in that role is somebody who later stars opposite Bruce Willis in Die Hard, and that's Jeremy Irons.
Sure.
I think he could have played Hans Gruber. Coincidentally, spoiler alert, in the movies, he technically is Hans Gruber's brother.
Oh, come on. You're really going to spoil a 25-year-old movie on the podcast? How dare you?
Well, they can just crucify me, I guess. But
I just like, there's like a lot to watch, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So I would really appreciate it if you didn't spoil it for me. If you didn't spoil this movie that came out in 1995 for me. Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
People like that drive me nuts. Like, no, listen, let's talk about this real quick. What do you think is how much time has to pass before the spoiler alert is a moot point? Like, you can't say spoiler alert about anything because it's not a spoiler because it's been out long enough. Like, what's the cutoff?
Okay, so we were talking about this last year actually when Endgame came out.
Yeah,
and we had this conversation because people were posting stuff. I think actually before I even got to see the movie, I saw people posting weird spoilers, and it was hard to try to avoid those. So. All that being said, I think there should be 30 days.
Yeah, that's it.
After 30 days, you should be able to talk about it with people and not have to worry about somebody like flipping out on you because you spoiled a movie. Like, dude, if you wanted to see it so bad, you would have seen it in that 30 days.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah, like that's not my fault that you didn't get around to it.
Right, exactly. If you wanted to see it so bad that you really cared, you didn't want it to be spoiled, you would have tried to see it within the first week of it opening. Yeah. But no, here we are 35 days out from when it opened, and you still have no clue? Go fuck yourself.
That's maybe the spiciest take we've had on this show so far. I like that. You're throwing some hot sauce tonight, man. I appreciate it.
Sometimes it's got to be said.
I think I was thinking more in the terms of like not just movies, but like movies and TV shows like under the same umbrella.
I feel like
I like your 30. I like your 30-day rule.
For everybody. Yeah. I think I remember, back when. And I quit watching the show, but back when like The Walking Dead was at its peak, everybody and their fucking brother was watching The Walking Dead. I remember people saying like, don't spoil The Walking Dead for me. I didn't see it yet. Like, okay. And like we'd be sitting there like with a group of us at work. All of our desks are like, within talking distance, and you start to talk about the episode like 4 or 5 days out, and people are like, stop. Like, come on, just no. Either go watch the episode. Like in those instances, sometimes I'd be like, all right, dude, you got one more day.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm talking about this shit. And if you don't want to hear it, I don't know, stick something sharp in your eyes and poke out your eardrums. I don't care. I'm going to talk about this because I want to.
It's very charitable of you to give the extra day. I would be appreciative of that personally.
It's just, I don't know, man. I feel like people take it too seriously. Now, I mean, I get it. Like, you've been waiting for something. You want to see it. You want to be shocked by the results. But you got to have some reasonable, realistic expectations of how long people have to keep their mouth shut. You know? And it's not like, people have to keep their mouth shut indefinitely. There's got to be some time there. Like, okay, it's been 30 days. we can talk about this now, and it's not our fault if you haven't seen it.
It's been 30 days, and we've all been doing you this favor, and you have not returned the favor by watching whatever it is we're talking about. Therefore, the time on the favor has expired, and here's what happens. Here's who dies.
Exactly. So, yeah, man. 30 days. Flat out, 30 days. That's
30
it.
days. All right. 30 days. You heard it here first. If I had a gavel, I would strike the gavel here on the show, but I don't have one. Maybe I should get one.
Hold on.
There it is. That's an official ruling.
Official ruling.
Judge, jury, and executioner right here on Going Commando.
Now we have an official timeline, so we're good. Official,
Exactly.
You get 30 days.
Getting back to Die Hard, one thing I wanted to bring up is, and this is also a thing that I didn't really recognize, and we were talking a little bit about the difference in action hero Bruce Willis versus some of the more archetypal action heroes of the 1980s. This movie also just in general just has like a different tone, a different look and feel and pace for movies of that era. It just looks different. It feels different. When you watch it, you feel like you're watching something brand new being basically invented before your eyes. One thing that I didn't necessarily remember about this is that Jan de Bont is the cinematographer on this movie. And he is best known, I think, for directing Speed and Twister, are his probably two biggest director credits. But, 6 years prior, he was the director of photography on Die Hard. And it's interesting looking at that now and knowing that, and watching a movie like Speed, or thinking about a movie like Speed and how that movie is shot and how that movie is directed. And there's definitely a lot of similarities. I mean, obviously, the elevator stuff in Die Hard and in Speed is a little on the nose, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. And I just really love how this movie looks and how it's directed and shot. And I think he's probably a big reason why. Would you agree?
No, I agree. And that's, to your point there, that is one of those things that's actually talked about a lot, is how this movie was the first one to kind of come up with the action movie tentpole of the star being trapped somewhere.
Yeah.
Trapped in a building with this, highly trained, forces of bad guys, and them against, basically all odds with no help, or very little help at least. And this was the first movie to do it. And I would argue anybody that this movie has done it better than any other movie that came after it. You could say, Speed, spoiler alert, they're on a bus.
They're on a bus, and the bus has a bomb on it. You're welcome, everybody.
Right. Exactly. But I mean, like, in any other movie where that's been a thing. I'm struggling right now to come up with another one, but I'm sure there's Speed 2. They basically followed the same thing again. And then I'm sure other movies, you probably could think of some if you try. I'm drawing a blank here right now.
I think, credit has to go to him, to Jan de Bont, for really revolutionizing the way action movies are shot and the way action movies look. This movie is shot on location. I read that a lot of handheld cameras were used, which was not a very common thing back then in the shooting of this movie. And it shows. That sort of thing shows versus, a movie like Commando or Bloodsport or whatever, where everything's like, it's just different. It just feels different. You don't feel like you're like watching something that's being shot on a movie set necessarily, right. And you're not.
Right. No, and it's, because that was shot in the 20th Century Fox building, I think.
Yes, I believe so.
Pretty certain. And it's funny, like, there's a really cool show. You should watch it. You have Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a cool show called The Movies That Made Us. It's kind of like an off branch of The Toys That Made Us, which was another one that Netflix did, which is pretty interesting. You should watch if you got a little bit of time to kill. But they did Die Hard, and they talked, about how all the interesting things about, they were looking for a place to shoot, and somebody's like, hey, we have our own building right here that's still under construction. Kind of fits the purposes. Why don't we just use that? And then other, aspects of like kind of, I don't want to say guerrilla filmmaking, because it wasn't guerrilla filmmaking, but there was a lot of things they did that they really kind of took a lot of risk on. Like a good example, like the helicopter scenes where the two helicopters come in, basically the gunships come in, and they film that in one take. Basically, all the shots. I can't remember what they said, but they shot from like so many camera angles. something like 40 or 50 camera angles, all to do this shot, because the city of LA said, hey, you can only shoot, I think for like most of it, they could only shoot between the hours of 6 p.m. to like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning, and then they had to stop. So a lot of the film, and they couldn't film in the building during the daytime because of all the gunfire.
Sure.
People in the buildings were like,
that's not what you want.
So a lot of the gunfire, like the sounds, like you see them firing, and I don't know if you noticed, there are scenes where like you see somebody shooting and you see the flash, right? But there's also a lot of scenes where you just hear them shooting, or you see like Bruce Willis from like chest height up and you can't quite see the firearm. That's because they're actually not firing in that scene. They went back and put the noise and everything in there secondary to all that. But getting back to the helicopter scene, they did that in like 30 minutes. The city of LA gave them 3 hours to shoot that. They wanted like 16 hours to shoot all the scenes. And the city said, no, you can do it in 3. And after they did the first take, flying through the streets like that, because they flew in so low, the city were like, no, you got to stop. No more. No, you can't fly helicopters between buildings like that. So they got all their shots basically on the first take.
Amazing.
That's interesting.
What are the odds, You
wouldn't have thought that they could pull that off like that. But I guess they thought because, they're probably going to shut us down, or they're going to complain a lot. We're probably only going to get 1 or 2 chances at this. So let's throw as many cameras on it as we possibly can and see what happens.
Yeah.
Coincidentally to that, one of the second unit directors, or maybe camera runners, I don't know. This is something else I found in the whole Movies That Made Us series, shot a lot of the stuff for Home Alone.
Oh, okay.
That's how they got a lot of those things, like the traveling angle where the camera's following. I don't know if you remember the scene where like Kevin McAllister's like he goes across that zip line and you just see him.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, the camera's right in his face. They got that and like some of the other scenes from their experience doing Die Hard.
Nice.
So it all kind of connects in a little bit there.
Yeah, it does. Hey, speaking of gunfire, I want to talk about Officer Powell for a second, who is played by Reginald VelJohnson, a pre-Family Matters Reginald VelJohnson, and he's a big part of the movie. His relationship with John is a super important crutch in this movie, I think. But before all of that happens, we see him in a convenience store buying a bunch of Twinkies for his pregnant wife, he says, and he gets a call from dispatch. And this is when John McClane has decided to try to pull the fire alarm in order to basically get police to the building while the terrorists have taken this entire Christmas party hostage, including his wife, Holly. And he's right down the street from the Nakatomi building. And while he's in this store, there's a gunfight happening between John McClane and some of the goons on the roof. And he looks up, there's a shot of him looking at the building, and he sees, at least in my eyes, what could only be gunfire, right? Taking place on top of the roof. It's a really cool shot, but it doesn't seem to register with him for some reason. And I found that a little strange. I mean, it's plot armor, but you get this call to go check out this building. You go into a parking lot of a convenience store, you look at the building, you see the roof, and there's like flashes on the roof. And he just thinks like, well, I mean, obviously he goes to the building anyway, but he doesn't really seem to think anything of it, which I thought was weird.
Well, okay. I have an explanation for that. Maybe.
Okay.
I'm going to throw out my explanation and see what you think. So, I have quite a bit of experience. I own several firearms. So I've shot a bunch. If you're really close to firearms, it's very loud. You have to have ear protection. It'll hurt your ears. And if you're in an area where there's no other sound at all, the sound carries quite a bit. But if you put it in a really sound polluted city, from a couple miles away, also being on the top of a building where the sound doesn't have as many walls to echo off of, you may not be able to hear it from that distance. And seeing the lights on the building flashing, I mean, all those buildings have lots of flashing lights and things, so helicopters and stuff don't run into them. So maybe he just assumed it's flashing lights on the building or something of that nature and didn't equate it to being gunfire.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get
maybe. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, I don't know. It seems like a reach to me. I mean, it makes sense. Your explanation makes sense. But, when I was watching it this afternoon, I just thought like, oh, that's very obviously gunfire, because I knew as the viewer that it was gunfire. And obviously Officer Powell will see it as such. But that was not the case. He went to the hotel and was buzzed in by the stand-in front desk guy who was like with the terrorists, and isn't there very long and decides to leave until John McClane kills Marco and basically just like tosses him onto the top of Officer Powell's police car, which is a great scene.
Sorry to waste your time.
No problem at all.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful. Dum-da-dum, delightful. For the love... 8 Lincoln 30 to dispatch.
8030, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a wild goose chase over here at Nakatomi Plaza. Everything here's okay. Over. But nobody has no place to go. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Man, God, 7 fingers ain't
Welcome to the party, pal.
Turn up the heat and it's getting ready to pop.
Police with automatic rifle fire in Nakatomi. I need backup assistance now. Now, goddammit, now!
Great scene. Also, I want to clear something up real quick, because they never say, but I always was under the impression that the Nakatomi was a corporate building, not a hotel.
Mm.
Because you think about it, Christmas in LA, they would probably have guests, I would think. Even if it was a building.
Yeah, probably.
And then, like, when they're in the boardroom, they're looking at all these things, like the models of a bridge, and then there's a model of what looks to be some type of ocean platform, drilling platform or something.
Right.
I think it's a corporate building, not a hotel.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I guess it's not super important to the plot one way or another, but yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's some kind of like corporation, because what was Mr. Tagaki's title that they established at the party scene? I already forgot. I just watched it like 4 hours ago.
I don't remember. He's like one of the executive officers, essentially.
Yeah.
Like one of the top guys, but I don't think they really say what he is. I'm sure they do. But I don't remember either. I find it interesting that this is their new building, and they don't seem to have very much security. Yet it seems like they have a lot of hard, disposable cash and items stashed in this building. And
lots of paper bonds.
Tons of paper bonds. I mean, what did they say? $600 million in paper bonds?
600 million. Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I guess it was, because going back to your point about, seeing all like the, like when Hans takes Mr. Tadaki into his office and they kind of show like all those like models and stuff. I assume it's to pay for that shit, like the Indonesia project, which was very briefly alluded to.
Right. And we don't know what that is or anything of that, that nature.
No, it's not really established. I think that's an interesting part too, is that even though Gruber and, his gang are like very obviously the antagonists of this movie, again, we talked about this a little bit with Ed Harris's character in The Rock in a previous episode, but you can almost kind of understand where they're coming from. They have a point when it comes to what their motives are, or what they say their motives are. It ends up not really being the case. They're just like trying to rob the place. But there's a certain like brief stench of like anti-American imperialism sentiment that I think permeates throughout some of the scenes with Hans Gruber in particular, which I thought was interesting. And it's like, in 1988, like nobody thought about that stuff really. But now in 2020, it's like, you look at that now and you're like, yeah, I kind of agree with them to a degree. I don't agree with his tactics necessarily, but I can see where he's coming from.
No, yeah, I get that. I think that the plot line for this movie was really excellently done in a very excellent way as far as attention to detail. And it's a movie where they really, they throw you off. Like, you don't really know they're there to rob the place. That you kind of get the sense that there's something else going on rather than just like a terrorist hostage thing. But you don't, figure out that they're really robbing the place until a little further in to them actually like taking everybody hostage. And there's a lot of really subtle details in this movie that they paid really, really close attention to that really just kind of help the plot along and give you really good moments. Like a good example is like the argument that John and Holly have, and then she leaves. But she's in her office and she lays a photo of her and the kids and John face down.
Right.
And then Hans Gruber takes up, sets up shop in her office and never like looks under the picture, even though she's there. And she looks at the picture at one point. He never like looks at it to figure out what it is. But then at the very end, he lifts it up to find out, that John's on the, in the picture with Holly. And he realizes who she is. But it's
because we should say, sorry, not to cut you off, but one of the main, I don't know if it's like a main thing, but one of the plot devices that kind of drives a wedge in between John McClane and Holly, other than the fact that they live 3,000 miles apart, is that Holly has started going by her maiden name, even though they are still married. So that is why Hans did not realize that, they were married, because she wasn't Holly McClane. She was Holly Gennaro.
Right. And it's funny, I think this is going to segue into us talking about something else that I know was on your list of stuff you want to talk about. But I find it really odd that during the whole scene where Ellis goes in the office with Hans to try to like negotiate and get John to turn himself in, why does he never bring up at any point that, no, she's actually his wife?
I don't know.
To me, does that not seem like a way more risky move to say like, oh yeah, he's my old friend. I'm inviting him out here to the party, and you're putting yourself in a position to be the target of Hans Gruber's rage and getting mad. I would have thought he would just point out, well, no, that's his wife right there. That's more motivation to come down than just an old buddy, if you think about it.
Well, I mean, I guess what I can point to is two things. One, that it's established very on that Ellis is a dipshit, first of all, and he's trying to have sex with Holly, second of all.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's probably still got that in the back of his mind, right? When I was watching this movie this afternoon and Ellis first appeared on screen, my first thought, like instantly, and I don't know why my brain does this, but my first thought instantly was like, this guy reminds me to a T of Donald Trump Jr.
What are you doing?
I'm tired of sitting here waiting to see who gets us killed first, them or your husband.
What are you going to do?
Hey, babe, I negotiate $1 million deals for breakfast. I think I can handle this Euro trash. Hey, frequency talk, huh?
If you listen to me, he would be neutralized already.
I don't want neutral, I want dead. Hope I'm not interrupting.
What does he want?
It's not what I want, it's what I can give you. Look, let's be straight, okay? It's obvious you're not some dumb schmuck up here to snatch a few purses, am I right?
You're very perceptive.
I watch 60 Minutes. I say to myself, these guys are professional, they're motivated, they're happening, i.e. they want something, huh? Now, personally, I couldn't care less about your politics. Maybe you're pissed off at the camel jockeys, maybe it's the Hebes, Northern Ireland. It's none of my business. I figure you're here to negotiate, am I right?
You're amazing. You figured this all out already.
Hey, business is business. You use a gun, I use a fountain pen. What's the difference? Let's put it in my terms. You're here in a hostile takeover. You grab us for some green mail, but you didn't expect some poison pill was going to be running around in the building. Am I right? Hans, Bobby, I'm your white knight.
I must have missed 60 Minutes. What are you saying?
The guy upstairs is fucking things up, huh? I can give him to you.
Looks just like him. He's got the same shitty beard. Very obviously a cokehead. Smarmy dickhead. Thinks he's the smartest guy in the room when he clearly is not. Just has like the same energy. It's crazy because, obviously this is like, 32 years ago, but That's the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, that's Don Jr. Ellis is Don Jr.
Yeah, no, you're right. They definitely have a lot of the same bravado going on there, and the way they carry themselves. I mean, we don't know that Don Jr. is a raging cokehead, but we can gather probably.
Allegedly, we'll say allegedly. But I mean, all the telltale signs are there. I've obviously I've been unemployed due to COVID-19 since March, but I've worked in the service industry for a long time. Mm-hmm. And one thing that maybe people don't know about the service industry, if you've never worked in it before, is that cocaine use among service industry employees is just rampant in most restaurants and bars you've ever been to. And so as a result, I've never done it myself, and I never wanted to. But you kind of are able to get a beat on someone and be able to recognize certain tics and certain things that they're doing when they're high on cocaine. And when I see Don Jr. on like a clip of Don Jr. on Fox News or wherever the fuck he is, saying that his dad won Georgia, his dad won Pennsylvania, his dad won Michigan, his dad won Wisconsin, and he's got like this energy to him that it's cocaine energy, man. I don't know how else to explain it. It just is. And when you know it, you see it. It's like pornography. It's like I can't explain it, but I know it when I see it, and I know it when I see it.
That makes sense. It's funny. I have not been around a ton of people who, were doing a lot of cocaine.
Yeah.
I do remember times back in Brevard, like there was one particular bar that you and I went to a couple times. Not a lot, but a couple times. And I remember wiping my hand across the back of the toilet seat one time, and it looked white and powdery. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, we know what somebody does in this bathroom.
Yeah. I mean, that is what can happen. And again, like to draw on the similarities even more, when Ellis is in the office with Hans Gruber and he says, and I quote, "Hey babe, I negotiate $1 million deals for breakfast. I think I can handle this Euro trash." That's just totally something Don Jr. would say in my mind. I don't know if he actually would, but in my mind it fits. It makes sense.
Yeah, no,
and it's a great quote. Also, great writing. Great delivery.
It is a great quote. I want to kind of change gears here just a little bit because we were talking about Hans Gruber.
Go for it.
And Alan Rickman's portrayal of the character. I think that they couldn't have cast a better person to play opposite of Bruce Willis in this particular movie. Because Bruce Willis was not a classically trained actor. I would argue that he's not a bad actor. He's done some very serious roles, and he does really well when he's motivated. Alan Rickman was an amazing actor.
Oh yeah,
but the
total pro.
Yeah, but the character of Hans is in sharp contrast, essentially the exact opposite of what John McClane is. He talks about his suit. When they're in the elevator with Takaki, and he's talking about where they apparently shop at the same place to get their suits, some crazy high-end place in England, it sounds like.
Yeah.
He's obviously well-educated, went to school somewhere. And then you got McClane, who's this high school diploma beat cop, not super well-educated, but just street smart.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really good contrast of, being a very good foil for the hero and vice versa.
I totally agree. I really like the scene that where they kind of first like interact with each other in person, where John McClane finds Hans Gruber like up on the roof because Hans is looking for he's basically like detonating the bombs, right? Or setting up the bombs to detonate to blow the roof off of this plaza.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, going into this movie blind, the way that Bruce Willis plays it when he finds him, he really makes it seem like he's fallen for the fact that Hans Gruber is pretending to be this like American guy, and he's still got a very bad American accent, I should say. Although I always enjoy it when English actors do American accents in movies, or just English people in general do American accents. I always think it's very funny. And that, no exception here. But he really makes the audience think that he doesn't know that it's actually Hans. And they have a nice little scene together.
Hi there. How you doing?
Oh, please, God, no, you're one of them, aren't you? You're one of them. No, don't kill me, please. No, please. Don't kill me, please.
Whoa, relax. Relax, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm not gonna hurt you! The fuck are you doing up here? What were you looking for?
I managed to get out of there and... well, I was just trying to get up on the roof and see if I could signal for help, you know. It's just from here. Why don't you come in and help?
Ho.
We got...
Forget the roof.
Come on.
I said forget the roof. I got people all over. Well, you want to stay alive? You stay with me. You smoke?
Yeah. Thanks. You don't work for Nakatomi. And if you're not one of them...
I'm a cop from New York.
New York?
Yeah. Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake. Who knew? Yeah. It's better than being caught with your pants down, huh? I'm John McClane.
They just kind of talk and laugh, and John McClane hands him a gun, a revolver, a handgun. Obviously, Hans tries to pull it on him, but it's not loaded. And John McClane basically says like, "Oh, like how stupid do you think I am?" Which I thought was a really cool scene. Like, I didn't really remember very much about this movie or that scene, as we've established, and I thought that was really entertaining.
It's funny you bring up that scene. That's one of the things they talk about in that docu, The Movies That Made Us. They talk about that particular scene and how that came about. So a lot of that movie was written legitimately, like just right in front of the shooting. There were there were rewrites going on like the night before they were going to shoot scene, and they were trying to think of a clever way for the two actors to meet. Like, how are we going to put them face to face? We want to put them face to face so they meet each other earlier on, not just at the climactic end of the movie, because they knew that they wanted to use the picture frame shot at the very end where he realizes that Holly is McClane's wife. And Alan Rickman, apparently, somebody was asking him to do impressions of Americans while they were having lunch. On set, they're having lunch, and he was, you have a very classic English accent. Can you do any American, can you do an American? And that was his American accent that he did.
Yeah.
And they went back in and wrote that scene and shot it the next day. That scene was totally basically that was just a happy accident that somebody saw Alan Rickman do an American accent and were like, holy shit, this would be great in the movie.
That's awesome. And again, it's another product of one of my favorite things, which is English people trying to do American accents and not always doing them very well. This is a little bit off topic, but we were talking about Birds of Prey earlier, very briefly. Which again, if you haven't seen it, it's the Harley Quinn movie. Margot Robbie's great in it. But Ewan McGregor plays the main villain in the movie, right? And he's talking with an American accent. And as we all know, Ewan McGregor is Scottish, has a very thick, natural Scottish accent. And every time, and I don't mean to pick on him, even though it's still punching up technically, but every time I see Ewan McGregor in anything where he's playing an American, he just sounds like a cartoon character to me, trying to do the American accent.
It's funny you mention that because there are some English actors that do an excellent job at giving an American accent. One that comes to mind, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, is Charlie Hunnam.
No, I'm not.
Okay. He was the lead in Sons of Anarchy. Played Jax Teller, the blonde hair guy. His American accent is great. You listen to him talk, you have no idea he's actually got an English accent. He's actually, English. His accent was so good, and he did it for so long, actually, that when he went to go do a movie where he had to have his actual English accent, he couldn't do it. He forgot how to have an English accent because he did, which is an interesting fact.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see. Because obviously, you know, there's a million examples of American actors doing English accents, right? So to experience the reverse, I have a somewhat embarrassing thing to admit, being a co-host of a movie podcast, is that I did not realize until long after I had seen many of his movies that Christian Bale is English. I had no fucking idea.
Okay. How many movies did you see before you realized this fact?
I'm trying to think, and it's like, I want to say I knew that he was English before that like tape leaked of him like having an outburst on a set of a movie, but like maybe that was what it was. I don't know, actually. All I know is that I at least saw him in like American Psycho and Batman Begins, and what was that movie with the dragons? Reign of Fire with Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, we saw that in the theater, I think.
We did, and he used his regular English accent for that.
Yeah, see, that's what's funny about it, is that at that point, I figured, oh, he's just an American actor doing an English accent, when in reality, he was an English actor doing an English accent.
Doing an American accent all those years, yeah. It's funny,
but he's one of the best ones at it, and sorry to cut you off, but I just think about, you know, not just Ewan McGregor, but like other, I don't know why this popped into my head, but are you familiar with the show Servant? It's on Apple TV.
No, I don't have it. I don't do Apple stuff.
Oh, well, you know, I upgraded my iPhone last September, and they gave me a free year of Apple TV for doing my upgrade. That's the only reason I have it. But there's a show on it called Servant that is at least like conceived by M. Night Shyamalan. It's a good show. There's only one season of it. I think the second season is coming out soon. But anyway, in the show, Rupert Grint plays one of the main characters, who is like, I think, best known for probably the Harry Potter movies. English guy. And he does what I think is like what a lot of actors tend to do, English actors, when they have to play American characters, is they just kind of like whisper all their lines, just like be more gruff instead of enunciating, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but he's like very quiet, and like doesn't really enunciate or like really like do much with it because, you know, maybe he can't. I don't know, but it's a good show. Servant, check it out.
It's funny that we've got off on this tangent because when I hear of like an English actor doing an American accent, I can't for the life of me figure out how they do it because, you know, being this my native tongue and that's my accent, like I guess I can't phonetically figure out how, like, what sound you're supposed to make an English accent, like an American accent. Does that make sense? Like, it's just the way we talk. So it boggles my mind when they're like, oh yeah, he's doing an American accent, but he's actually English or whatever. I'm like, how? That's not even possible. Because I find it funny.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
you ever notice when people sing, they don't typically sing in their native tongue accent, like an English singer.
No, not really.
When they're singing, they sound like an American.
Yeah.
The only two caveats that I think I've ever heard is like Chinese or Japanese singers. They have a little bit of that accent, and like Germans or Russians, they do to some extent.
Yeah.
But like
a little bit.
Most of the rest of the world, like you can't really tell what they are when they're singing in English. You have no clue. It's all they're talking, which is really weird.
Yeah, and we're the reason that they all have to sing in English. Like it's America's fault that they all feel like they have to do that.
Well, I don't know if it's our fault or if we're just the biggest music market.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, like I was about to say, I don't know that makes it our fault. It's just like we're the biggest market, so they do. I mean, but then you have other like really successful groups who will sing a little bit of English, but still sing a lot of stuff in whatever their native tongue is, and they do really well. Like Rammstein comes to mind.
Sure.
There's a really heavy group from Russia, Slaughter to Prevail.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, I'll have to look him up, and maybe I'll send you a link. They have this singer, and he does Cookie Monster, and really good. But like he talks, like he sings, and he sounds fairly like American. But then when they start talking, it's like straight up Russian. It's so strange.
I mean, I think what might happen in a lot of those cases is these people, they grow up listening to American music, and that's their influence, and they sing along to it, and that's kind of how they learn to sing, you know, for lack of a better term, an American accent. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. It might be the same for us if we were in a country like that and we're listening, like, say, Russian was like the predominant language in the world.
Yeah.
It might be the same. We might actually all sound Russian.
Yeah, I mean, I know I sound Spanish when I'm singing the one Spanish verse in "Caress Me Down" by Sublime, which I still am pretty sure I know all the words to, even though I don't even know what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Mucho gusto, me llamo Bradley.
Yeah, you kinda.
You're really not giving me anything to work with here, man. You're no selling everything I'm saying.
Sorry, man. I guess I just feel like Bruiser Brody all of a sudden wrestling.
Yeah,
no
tough crowd tonight on Going Commando. Anyway, let's get back to Die Hard. So this is something that I know you want to talk about, and it's a big debate on the internet.
Oh, okay.
About this time every year, it seems like, and the question is Die Hard a Christmas movie? And I know you told me off air that you have a very convincing argument for why it is, and I would like to hear it.
Okay, I'm gonna try to break it down because like I could go into like a really long version of it, which would take a while, but it's much in the same way that we were talking about Mel Gibson's arc in Lethal Weapon last time. John McClane's arc is also very Ebenezer Scrooge-esque in a lot of ways.
Yes.
You know, because he comes to town, he's very bitter, he's angry, but he's trying to, you know, he's trying to basically get his wife to relent and do what he wants. And he realizes over the course of the movie, basically, you know, that he was wrong and he should have said he was sorry a long time ago. He comes out a different person.
Right.
And the movie is explicitly set in Christmas time. I mean, it is a Christmas party that all this happens in.
Yeah.
Much like Lethal Weapon the year prior, it starts out with Christmas music and ends with Christmas music. The characters match up really well. You could say that somebody like Al Powell, Sergeant Powell, his character could almost be, you could almost imagine him as like the ghost of Christmas Present, helping guide him through his journey because he's there, you know, to help give him moral support as he's going through all of these bad things that McClane's going through. So, I mean, he's not showing him like the future, but he does essentially, that scene where McClane's digging glass out of the bottom of his foot, which is gnarly, by the way.
Oh, super gross. Yeah, we didn't establish this whole time McClane is barefoot for the whole movie, essentially, while he's doing all this crazy shit.
Yeah, but as they're sitting there talking and McClane's, you know, lamenting that he wished he'd apologized and he wished he'd have been there and been more supportive for his wife while she was taking, you know, going down her career path and all these things. Sergeant Powell gives him basically the, you know, it's not too late. You're going to get out of this. You just keep your head down and keep yourself safe. And it's, you know, in a lot of ways, when he sees Holly in the movie at the end and they kiss after, you know, Hans has fallen out of the window and everything and they've dropped him, it's not as emotional as when he finally meets Sergeant Powell face to face.
No, it's not.
It's almost, and they play music in the background, like the, you know, the score behind it has meant to kind of show that like this is like the emotional payoff at the end of the movie. In a lot of ways.
Right.
So to me, it definitely feels like a Christmas movie. There's a lot of other Christmas movies that kind of do that whole, you know, the hero has some really awful shit of some sort he's going through. In normal Christmas movies, it's a conflict of character where, you know, they're doing something bad and they feel bad about it, so they have to repent, or their life's just not going good and they have to see, you know, what they have going for them. In the sense of Die Hard, it's the same thing, just represented in a different way, you know, rather than saying like, well, this is where you're going to end up alone and they're going to show it to you. McClane is experiencing all these physical trauma, like all this pain and going through it emotionally, but it's all physical, manifest physical.
Yeah.
And you could kind of say that like, you know, Hans Gruber and the terrorist, they're essentially maybe, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but you could almost say they kind of represent like the ghost of Christmas future.
Okay.
Because he's got to overcome and change who he is to basically stop, you know, the future from unfolding the way it could. So, I mean, I honestly think, there's probably people who argue Die Hard being a Christmas movie better than me, but I think all the tropes of a Christmas movie are there.
It's a convincing argument. I'm personally like, I think when we started this pod, when we started the show tonight, I was like kind of like on the fence a little bit. But the more I've been thinking about it and, you know, hearing your argument, I think I agree. And I guess the one thing I would add is that even though we talked about Lethal Weapon last week, but a movie like Lethal Weapon, the fact that it's Christmas while the events of Lethal Weapon are taking place is almost immaterial to the plot. It just happens to be Christmas, right?
Right.
Like that movie could have taken place like in like June or July and have been essentially the exact same movie. Whereas with Die Hard, the fact that it's Christmas is the whole reason that the events of the movie are taking place. That's the whole reason that John McClane is in Los Angeles and not in New York. He would be home otherwise. So without Christmas, you don't have Die Hard.
Exactly. I mean, that's a part of the argument that I kind of overlooked until you just now brought it up, but that's 100% true. Without it being Christmas, he wouldn't have been there to start with. So,
yeah.
I think it's absolutely a Christmas movie. I think kind of what you need to really make something a Christmas movie is, first and foremost, like you said, it needs to be Christmas time. That has to be, an aspect of it. Like, I would argue that horror movies that take place during Christmas, somewhat a Christmas movie. You could, you could argue that with a lot of things, but I do think in Die Hard, all the things that happen in the movie and the plot that unfolds, plus the fact that it's during Christmas, really put it over the top as it being a Christmas movie, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. I like your point about horror movies because let's say Silent Night, Deadly Night, definitely a Christmas movie. Couldn't have taken place at any other time.
Black Christmas, another Christmas movie.
Black Christmas. What's the one with Goldberg playing Santa? What's that one called? I forgot already.
Oh, is that Silent Night, Deadly Night?
It might be, actually.
I'll look it up.
I don't know. Anyway.
No,
you know what I think it's called I think it's called Santa's Sleigh, but it's like SLAY. Maybe I'm not remembering it right. I don't know.
You're right. Santa's Sleigh.
Santa's Sleigh.
Yep, spelled SLAY. And it's a crazy movie and kind of all over the place too. But yeah, I mean, I think that's
of course. But it takes place at Christmas time.
Right. I think that really is the best, the biggest thing about a Christmas movie being a Christmas movie. Does it take place during Christmas? If it does, then yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, and again, to my point earlier, I mean, if the fact that it's Christmas time is a central point of the plot and why the plot is what it is, then yeah, regardless of genre, it doesn't have to be, like a movie like Home Alone, for example, or some kind of like more family friendly fare. We'll say, yeah, it all counts. It's all under the same big tent in my mind.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think if you have the aspects, all the ratios of a Christmas movie, you can have everything that makes a Christmas movie and not have it be set during Christmas time. And it wouldn't essentially be a Christmas movie. Because, I mean, you could take the general structure of a Christmas movie and make it almost anything, just take out the keywords and certain facts and of it and everything, and it could become an action movie, it could become a drama, whatever. I mean, hell, Hallmark Channel every year with 500 Christmas movies every year.
Did you see I reposted something on Instagram the other day on my story of like a mosaic of all the Hallmark movie, like posters, for lack of a better term, and like how similar they are.
Oh, they're almost identical.
It's so weird. It's so strange how, I mean, they've got a formula and they're sticking to it, and I guess it's working. Otherwise, they would probably not be making them. But
they make so much money doing that. It's crazy. My last job as a clinical nurse during the Christmas season. Well, I want to say during Christmas season, but really, going back probably 2 months, 3 months out before Christmas, Hallmark's channel just starts pumping that shit out every day. Every day. And I can't go into a room to give a patient medication like an old lady. There's about a 80% chance there's going to be a Hallmark movie on. 99% of the time, they eat that shit up.
So let me ask you this then. You obviously have a little bit of experience seeing these movies, even if it's passive. If you were cast in a Hallmark Christmas movie, what would be the part you would play? Like the archetype?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think I want to be like the Grinch character in the movie. I want to be the one who's trying to keep the hot attractive and Prince Charming apart. I want to be like the slimy friend who's trying to get in her pants, or like the friend.
Oh, God. Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to be the good guy in that role. you hear this all the time in pro wrestling. Pro wrestlers will say, it's way more fun to play the villain.
Sure.
Because you have more freedom to do whatever you want and, get as much heat as you want. I think, especially for those movies, because they're so cookie cutter and boring, like I'd want to be I'd want to be the most interesting character in the movie, which has got to be the guy who's got ulterior motives, whether he's trying to take, somebody's Christmas tree farm or
bastard.
Or somebody's
so dastardly.
Right, or somebody's woman, or he's stealing money from the kids in the orphanage. I don't know. I mean, insert scumbag. I'll play insert scumbag.
Hey, listen, we talk about character actors a lot on this pod, and we talked about them a lot earlier on in this episode, and, I salute them. The movies we love would not be the same without them, and I'm sure that's the case for these awful Hallmark movies also.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
without them playing, without somebody to play those roles, what do you have? You have a movie with like a really pretty girl and some really attractive dude, and they're falling during Christmas time. I mean, sure, somebody likes that when we'll eat that up, but you got to have something to throw in a little bit of spice, a little bit of conflict.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's like painting. You have different colors on your little palette that you paint with, and if you just have two colors, your painting is not going to be as fun to look at, right?
Right, exactly. So you got to have something a little bit, a little something to throw some spice in there. So, like I said, if given the choice, I will play, insert generic scumbag any day of the week over, Prince Charming. Plus, every time I've ever seen those characters in those movies, when I've walked in and, some old ladies watching them, those characters are so god-awful boring. They really are. Like, all the time.
They're himbos. You know about himbos, right?
No. Explain the term.
Well, himbo is basically a the term bimbo.
Oh,
I assume.
Okay.
So it's basically a male bimbo.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like a very conventionally attractive stupid man.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense, and it's true. They're all like really generic. I honestly think they get those guys is like they go down to like a Calvin Klein model shoot, and all the guys,
the himbo farm,
right? And
they go down to the himbo farm, and
all the guys that Calvin Klein passed up, they're like, all right, come on, get in the truck. How tall are you? 6'2". We want somebody who's 6'5". Get the fuck out of line.
You don't have abs. That's okay. That's a Christmas movie. You won't have to be in your underwear. You just have to have like a chiseled face. Right. It's like to your point. It's like all the Calvin Klein wannabe models who don't have a six pack.
Right, and they're all horrible actors, but it's great for the old ladies who want like. The Hallmark movies got everything that older people want. So they have a really attractive, chiseled jaw young man for the old women to like, oh, he's so sweet. She really needs to marry that man. And then there's always a really attractive...
It's very wholesome.
Yeah, there's a really attractive girl in there starring next to him that when the old guy, her husband, wakes up next to her in the couch, he can look at her for a second and go, all right, I'm going back to bed.
Another day at the himbo farm.
Yep.
Get up every day at 6 a.m, milk those cows, prod those himbos. I think if I was going to be in a Hallmark movie, similar to you, I think I would want to play like the ex-boyfriend who's like a little grittier, has tattoos, and is like, something along the lines of like what your grandmother would see and be like, oh no, she can't end up with him. He's got tattoos. He's got no future. He wears black all the time. He's very brooding and mean. And I think that's the part you could say that's the part I was born to play.
Yeah, man, I can see it. You know what? I think we have a career change ahead for you. What we need to do is we need to get you set up with some headshots. And, we'll take your hair, we'll make it really kind of greasy, and
sure,
we'll send those off to Hallmark, man. Like you can fit right in the generic scumbag guy too.
I'm not doing anything else, so I might as well become a character actor, right?
Might as well.
All right. So with that in mind, let's talk about our fists rating for Die Hard.
Okay.
What do you think?
Oh, dude, without a doubt, Die Hard is 5 fist.
Five fists.
Without
Okay.
a doubt. I could watch Die Hard once or twice a year, but it is definitely a must for me at Christmas time. It has been for the last, I don't know, 10 years, a movie that I always watch during Christmas. It's a 5 fist. It's hands down. It has to be a 5 fist movie.
So I'm gonna pull a Dave Meltzer here with our fists rating, and I'm gonna give this a Omega Okada Tokyo Dome like rating. I'm gonna give it 6.25 fists out of a possible 5 fists.
Okay. I didn't know that was an option
your point
until now.
It is now. I just decided. Yeah, I mean, to your point and all the points that you made, and we talked about it earlier. It's a tentpole of the genre. It redefined what an action movie could be. It made Bruce Willis's career. I was actually thinking about this earlier. I think that Bruce Willis walked so that Nicolas Cage could run.
Yeah.
Because you have like an idea in your head. Someone says, think of an action hero. What do you think of? Big muscly guy, perfect hair, perfect body, good at everything, totally perfect, like cut out of marble, whatever. And then Bruce Willis comes along, and he's none of that. And I think without Die Hard, you don't see Nicolas Cage in a movie like The Rock or Face Off or Con Air.
Yeah, man. I definitely want to agree with you on that. I don't think you're wrong at all. One thing I will say though is that in some of Nicolas Cage's roles, at least one or two that I can think of, he's pretty jacked actually. Like, do you remember him in Con Air?
Well, sure, but like apart from like muscle size, he's not a typical action hero. He doesn't really have the look.
No,
You're
right.
So that was just a thought that I had. But anyway, yeah, I mean this movie changed the course of action cinema forever in so many ways.
No,
and really gave the genre like a shot in the arm that it really needed at the end, like towards the end of the 1980s, when these studios were just pumping out formulaic action movie after formulaic action movie. That again, I like most of those movies. Not saying I don't like them, but this movie took it to new heights and did something different with it and something exciting with it that had never really been done before on such a grand scale. And can't be denied. 6.25 fists out of a possible 5 fists.
Man, I wish I'd have known that prior to voting. Because I'd have broke the rules too. But no, I think
the thing about rules, James, is that we made the rules, therefore we are allowed to break them, but nobody else is. Just the two of us.
That's true. Okay, I agree with that. No, man, just to reiterate what you said, I agree. Without Bruce Willis, we probably wouldn't have had some of the action stars we had later on, and he definitely did kind of break the mold of the action star in a good way, in a really good way, because as your point, he's not the chiseled, tall, overly muscular action star. He's definitely he's very much the everyman, but you root for him, and he somehow pulls it out. Definitely worse for wear. Every Die Hard movie, he comes out looking like hamburger at the end of the movie, but he pulls it out somehow. And I look forward to us doing Die Hard later on.
Oh yeah,
I think we've already talked about one of the ones where I don't know if we necessarily have to do Die Hard 2, but we definitely got to do Die Hard with a Vengeance at some point, because that's, again, one of my favorite action movies of all time. That's one I definitely could watch several times a year and not get bored of it.
No, same. It's one of my favorite movies ever of any genre, I think. So it is one we will definitely do on this pod at some point. But for tonight, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So let's jump off the roof of the Nakatomi Plaza onto a crash pad. Wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah starts tomorrow, which is also, we're recording this on Wednesday. Tomorrow is your birthday. So let me be the first to wish you a very happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't feel older, but, that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, birthdays don't matter that much at this point, but...
No, not really. But
it's still exciting,
The sentiment is still nice, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I think, family stuff. I think we're going to go over to her parents' house.
Cool.
They're probably doing a cake and the whole 9 yards. So it'll be fun.
Well, I hope it's great. I wish you all the best in your 36th trip around the sun, my friend.
36 years, man. Whew. Okay. Now I'm starting to feel like...
Now we're getting too old for this shit. So it's time to say goodnight. Good night, James.
Good night, Bryne.
But the fire is so delightful, and since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. It doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I hate going out in the storm, but I do